Hello social media, I'm Annie Logical. I'd like to share with you some of the shenanigans that are rife within campaigns and how the gatekeeping community are interlinked and work together. First of all, I'd like to talk about the fight against 5G in Glastonbury and how I became involved purely randomly, I might add, yet that's led to some enlightening of the roles being played by the gatekeeping community. I joined the Glastonbury group on Facebook. Then in June I was contacted by a man called Christopher Baker, and I've never heard of him before this. So he sends me this message. He tells me that he shares my reservations about Mark Steele, that he himself was having success in Glastonbury, that he'd refused to share a platform with Steele, saying he isn't credible enough and has a shaky past. So I was obviously pleased to hear that he was independent and that he too was fighting 5G in Glastonbury and that he didn't trust Steele. But then a different story was transpiring in the Glastonbury group, which has shown Baker to be untruthful and questionable. It appears that Baker posted in the group that a petition signed by members of the public had gone missing and were not handed in on time, and that he had photocopies that will suffice. Then a prominent campaigner in Glastonbury posted this in the group. She stated that the signatures were not missing and she had them. She states she was asked to photocopy them by Baker. Baker stated he would meet this lady in the afternoon to take the signatures and the evidence for the council meeting that evening, but then he let her know through a third party that he couldn't make it and he would meet her at the town hall. He was the only one with his name down to speak. Then he arrived late, he refused to take the petition, and he ignored the woman who had been instrumental in getting the signatures and refused to even speak at that meeting. The woman tried to speak but was refused, even though the council had a slot left. Now, there is clear sabotage going on here. So his comments to me, telling me that he was straight and honest, were clearly not the case at all. And he goes on to state that he has an elite group of anti-5G people behind him. Really. He then went on to comment that John Kitson had tried to befriend him and that he had told Kitson to modify his approach. He stated that his main concern was Mark Windows, who he claims has gone out on a campaign to discredit him, calling him a change agent and a spy in Mark's broadcasts, and said that he's trying to hijack all the good work that Baker had done, but he then claims that he set a trap for Mark Windows, which he was going to walk straight into. Of course, I knew that Mark Windows had recorded the Glastonbury meeting, and that Mark was pointing out to people that the council were trying to put together an advisory board that included scientific people, but which seemed to exclude campaigners. So I thought, what is this man really up to? He then called the campaigner a liar and publicly stated that herself and Mark Windows should stop calling him a government agent. Now, and this is the interesting bit, because this is what all gatekeepers always say. He says, why don't you work with the campaign instead of trying to own it? Okay, they always come out with that. So at this point, Mark Windows made a public comment on the group. He said that he's never even mentioned this man in his shows or anywhere else, to which Baker then replies that he should cast his mind back to what may have been throwaway remarks. No hard feelings, just felt miffed when I heard it. Now, that is not what he said in private comments. It's completely contradictory. And as I've already shown you, he made fake claims that Mark Windows had publicly tried to undermine him in his broadcasts, which clearly was made up nonsense, as a throwaway comment is not a public declaration in a broadcast. And it does definitely not requires Baker to be setting traps for Mark Windows. So now this man's shown himself to be untrustworthy, and yet here he is, a spokesperson for the Glastonbury area. And then a bombshell was dropped. Someone declared that the council chose him as the spokesperson and not the campaigners. So of course I was shocked. I mean, I asked him, have you been chosen by the council to represent the campaigners? And he said no. But then he posted this in the group. So he was selected by the council. And then the group had a comment from another campaigner who was at the council meeting, who stated that he clearly sabotaged the petition being handed in. He had not been chosen by the group as a facilitator, and he was having secret meetings with the council behind their backs. And she went on to add that they had the right to respond to the council themselves without his interference. This campaigner then publicly stated that she'd had a long and private messaging with Baker, which she believed confirmed him to be thoroughly untrustworthy, stated that he'd never been asked by the group to represent them, and that he admitted that he is a national and European campaigner and organiser of Say No to 5G groups. And there you have it, okay? Organiser of all the Say No to 5G groups. And the reason he's obviously contacted me is because he knows that I've already outed Steele with my research to show him for what he is. And whilst he was in the private messaging telling me how he believed me about Steele, this was on his own page. Clearly promoting Mark Steele, whilst he's making out that he doesn't trust him. And he also did an interview with John Kitson days after all this occurred. So, be aware of what's going on, okay? There's a group of them. It's not that hard to spot them, You're not that stupid, people, are you? Alright, I just thought I'd point this out and give you the heads up. So thanks for listening. I'm Annie Logical. Stay safe.